I want to introduce and welcome Reverend Matthew Watts to share also from the great state of West Virginia.
Thank you, Dr. Liz. My name is Pastor Matthew J. Watts. I'm the senior pastor and teacher of the Grace Bible Church on the west side of Charleston, West Virginia, one of West Virginia's most challenged neighborhoods, but a place to live. I'm a native of Mount Hope, West Virginia. Mr. James Evans Moore was raised a suburb of my little small coal mining town in Mount Hope, West Virginia. And I'm just delighted and honored to be with such distinguished colleagues here today. Well, 54 years ago, the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech at Stanford University that he called The Other America. And in that speech, he juxtapositions the powerful, affluent, luxurious America that is promoted to the rest of the world to that where the American Negro lived, it worked, and where they played. He described the American Negro as living on a lonely island of poverty, surrounded by a vast ocean of material prosperity. That analogy could be aptly applied to West Virginia. There are two West Virginians, one that the politicians and tourism experts promote, the beautiful, majestic mountains, the beautiful state parks with their luxurious accommodations, the plush green golf courses, and where wildlife are free to roam without fear. The beautiful flowing rivers and lakes with fish that are fisherman's paradise. And there's another West Virginia, nestled between those majestic mountains where poor Appalachian whites live in abject poverty, where they're struggling just trying to make ends meet, and where they're dealing with the scourge of opioid misuse, which has been compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic, where they live in these former coal mining towns that are now nearly ghost towns, a shell of their former selves, and where they try to etch out a decent, honest living under arduous conditions. And then there's the West Virginia's African-American residents, who for years have been taken for granted by one political party and ignored by the other. We African-Americans in West Virginia are the invisible citizens. We are more than marginalized, discriminated against, and excluded. We are extended the ultimate insult of all. We're simply ignored. We're treated as we're invisible, irrelevant, and inconsequential, except at election time. Our challenges begin at birth, where 1.6, where African-American infants suffer an infant mortality rate 1.7 times that of whites, where Black youth are suspended from schools twice the rate of whites, where the Black employment rate is 2.5 times that of whites, where Blacks overrepresented in juvenile justice and adult criminal justice is at astounding numbers. And yes, where Black lives expire at earlier ages than whites. There are two things that Blacks and poor whites in West Virginia share in common: a common struggle, an uncommon work ethic, and an unwavering commitment to resistance. Poor Blacks and poor white West Virginians deserve better treatment. They deserve a $15 minimum wage and a fully funded stimulus package. And that would be a step in the right direction. $15 minimum wage, a fully funded stimulus package, it's the moral thing to do. It's the right thing to do. It's the just thing to do. I've been a friend of Joe Manchin III for well over 35 years. I have supported him his entire political career. I've had many conversations with him, and I appeal to him to do the right thing by your citizens that so desperately need for you to stand up now and be the leader that we know that you are and that you can be in this very difficult hour. As a preacher of the gospel, I'm held hostage by the biblical text that he who gives to God, gives to the poor, they lend to God. The Bible is clear that you do not muzzle the mouth of the ox that treads out the corn, and that a laborer, a worker, is worthy of their hire. As James, the half-brother of Jesus, says in the book of James, that the cry, the plea of the laborers have reached toward heaven, who have been defrauded of a fair wage. And for far too long, low-income, hard-working West Virginians have been defrauded of their right to a livable wage. So poor Blacks and whites deserve a $15 minimum wage. They deserve a fully funded stimulus. It's the fair thing to do. It's the just thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And it's the moral thing to do. And the time for it is now. Thank you.